Hey everybody, it's Aaron coming to you with Software Zero to Hero, and today we are going to learn how to install and set up a virtual machine using VirtualBox 7.0. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to virtualbox.org, and the first page that will pop up is this main page here. Now, if you're using a Windows environment, that's what we're going to be setting things up, and I'm going to make videos for Mac and Linux environments as well. But for VirtualBox, we're going to be setting that up to use Ubuntu as well with a disk image, so that way we can use a Linux environment through that virtual machine too. Now, the virtual machines are really handy using for creating other environments. I've used them for work purposes multiple times, testing out different software as well. Just being able to work in a Linux environment from your Windows operating system is really handy instead of having to dual boot back and forth or actually install a Linux environment onto your machine itself. That way you kind of get the best of both worlds. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and download VirtualBox 7.0, which is the latest version that they have. And since we're going to be doing this through Windows, we're going to go ahead and use the Windows host, and that will take a few seconds to download here. All right, now that that's downloaded, let's go ahead and open up that execution file for that. Go ahead and give it permission to open up the system and install everything. So you're going to come up to this setup wizard, just like most standard installations of any kind of software. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And with these setups, I typically tell people just to leave them as is, just because the out of the box setup is pretty good using it. And when it comes to the directories that they set up as well. So this right here, you can ignore this network interference because it might temporarily shut off your internet to your machine there for a short bit. And this dependencies with Python Core Win32, you can go ahead and ignore that unless you're actually going to be doing something with those APIs. Now let's go ahead and just install this real quick, and it'll take just a few minutes to set up everything and get it installed. All right, now that we have that installed, you can go ahead and create a VirtualBox desktop icon, and then you can actually click to have it start after the installation, which that's what we'll do here. All right, now that we've got that going here, this is going to be your main page for it. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to set up our first virtual machine. This will be a basic one. One thing that you do need to have is an Ubuntu or whatever flavor of Linux that you want. You can have that downloaded to where you have that ISO file so you can have that disk image, which we already have Ubuntu as well. And we can go here and I'll show you which one we have. So we just went ahead and went to the Ubuntu website there for the downloads. And you can just go through, and I'm using the latest version of 22.04 for Ubuntu as well. So just go ahead and click here and download that file. And once you have that file downloaded, we'll use it here in just a second. It's to download Ubuntu, or if you already had it installed, let's go ahead and try our first machine out. So you can go ahead and go up here to machine and go to new, or you can go to the icon that they have right over here on the setup as well. So the first things first, we want to name our machine. So I'm going to go with that way it's just all with the branding there, Software Zero to Hero. So the next thing that you want to do is you want to upload that ISO image that you're going to be using as well. So go ahead and go in here. If you haven't done this already, you'll have to select its directory location. That way you can get that file. Once you've set up your first machine, this typically will already have that ISO file if you want to use it for a different virtual machine as you set it up as well. So I have that on my desktop, so I'm going to use that Ubuntu image like I said. All right, now that I have that already downloaded onto there, we have that where it's taken care of and it's showing up as our Ubuntu desktop AMD ISO that we're going to be using. Now you can do the unattended installation or the skipping unattended installation. I prefer doing the unattended installation, that way I can set up the virtual machine to my liking. So we're going to go ahead and change this here too. All right, now that you've had that, because you want to make sure to change that password because the initial password they put in there is change me. So you want to go ahead and have that done so we have everything taken care of. Now with the guest editions, you want to go through and do that as well. And the reason I say that is so that way you already have that ISO file on your machine. You'll see what I mean here in a second, which it shows that we should not have that. Oh, okay, because we're using a 2 in there. So let's go ahead and just take out that 2, and it's too long still. So we'll go with just software 0. And then next, now this is where we're going to set up our specifications for our virtual machine for that memory. Typically, I tell folks to set it up with a pretty good sized memory on there just so you have that option available. Now, it's not going to take up everything on your machine when it comes to running it, but it will have that capability to have plenty of memory and the processors and everything else, like I say, as you're going through this. So I usually set mine up roughly around the 15 to 20 mark on, or 15 mark on there, but on this machine that I'm using, I'm gonna go ahead and just set it up around 10,000 megabytes on there. So that way it's still in the green, but it's still kind of maxing it out. And usually on the processors, I tell folks usually to go to that half on there as well. It's just good common practice with it. There's a reason they have the scaling for the colors on here because it kind of gives you a suggestion of what you might need. And you can create different versions of that as you're going through. So on your disk size, you'll want to definitely create plenty of space on there just in case that you need it. I usually try to go around 256 with mine as well, just so I have plenty of storage space on that. But at the same time, it's not going to use all that up either. So this is just all the specs and the summary from your virtual machine as you're creating it. Now the next part does take a little while upon the boot up because it's going to have to boot everything up and then install Ubuntu as well. So we'll go ahead and speed the video up on that portion of it and we'll come back as it's coming through. All right, now that we've got to the login screen, we're going to go ahead and log in to our virtual machine. So there we are. We are into our Ubuntu VM. You can go ahead and skip through most of these prompts here when everything is done. Now we'll go ahead and maximize the screen and then you can see that everything is working with it. Sometimes you might run into an issue with the screen not actually filling up the entire screen. That's a common issue with Ubuntu when it comes to running on the virtual machines especially. So what you would do is you would actually go down here and insert that guest image edition CD on there, and then you would go into it and open a terminal, and then you would auto run that as well. So you'll just go into here, right click, and then open the terminal for that, and then you would go ahead and just run that autorun.sh. So it's dot dash autorun.sh, and it'll ask for your password on there and set everything up as well. And then once you have that, you can actually close it out, go down here to your Windows screen. You can click on it for the virtual screen size and you can scale it and then auto resize guest display and it'll fill up the entire screen here for you too. So that is the gist of getting your virtual machine set up. I will make some other videos for those tutorials if it doesn't fill up your screen, or adding a sudoer to the access list for adding any kind of permissions onto the system through the administrator portal too. So that's all I have. Just make sure to like and subscribe.